What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a brand new series on MTG Headquarters called You Better Know a Format. Today we're going to talk about Vintage, and I'm going to share some of the basics of the format with you. So Vintage is an eternal format, okay? Eternal formats are unique in that they contain every black bordered card set Wizards has ever printed. Each new card is also added as they're released. Originally, it was known as Type 1, which allows the use of all cards from all sets except the unsets, as well as there are certain banned cards that cause problems in sanctioned events, which I will talk about later. A number of the cards are also restricted to a maximum of one copy between a player's deck and sideboard due to their power. This mostly includes the Power 9, which we'll talk about later as well. Some confusing history about this. So Vintage dates its existence to the 1995 separation of sanctioned constructed tournaments into Type 1 and Type 2. Many of you are not even old enough to remember these format names. I remember playing in Type 1 and Type 2 tournaments. The latter now is called Standard. It was sometimes called Classic, a name later reused for a similar constructed format in MTGO. When the name Vintage was formally endorsed at the Magic Invitational, Vintage's restricted list was used as the banned list for a format called Type 1.5 or Classic, Restricted, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it became renamed to Legacy, and then we have Vintage and Legacy. Basic rules adhere. Vintage adheres to all the basic rules of constructed play. Minimum of 60 card deck. No maximum deck size as long as you're able to shuffle your deck unassisted, and up to 15 cards in your sideboard should you use it. With the exception of basic lands, okay, your combined deck and sideboard may not have more than 4 of any card, counted by its English title equivalent. So you cannot have 4 English Force of Wills and 4 Italian. The interesting thing that affects this format too, though, is cards from expansions and special sets, like from the Vault, Commander, Dual Decks, Conspiracy, are legal in Vintage on the date of their release. So we just saw Conspiracy, now we have Conspiracy 2. A lot of times those sets have cards that really are only in that set and uniquely to that set and not usable in any other format except Vintage. Now there are some banned cards, okay? Plenty of them, and here's a list. This is a list that's maintained by Wizards, but as a general rule, any card that references anti, any card with a conspiracy card type, so conspiracy cards from Conspiracy, Chaos Orb, Falling Star, for example, Brago's Favor, Backup Plan, World Knit, all these cards just banned from tournament play. Now, you may maintain your own ban list amongst your friends. The restricted cards is where we see some really expensive cards, and this means you can only have one of them in your deck and or sideboard. This would include cards like Ancestral Recall, Black Lotus, Mox Sapphire, Mox Ruby, Mox Pearl, Mox Jet, so the Power 9, Mana Vault, Memory Jar, Yawgmoth's Will, Yawgmoth's Bargain. Okay, so they're restricted due to their power level, basically. We have, what is the Power 9? A lot of people do ask, newer players, right? For us collectors and longtime players, we know it as, of course, the Mox Emerald, Pearl, Ruby, Jet, and Sapphire, as well as Black Lotus, Time Twister, Time Walk, and Ancestral Recall. They're also considered to be the most powerful cards ever printed. Some of you may say Island is the most powerful card ever printed, and maybe you'll argue that, but such is life. Some popular deck archetypes, things like Shops, Oath, Dredge, Fish Bomberman, Blue Angels, Storm Combo, Time Vault, Key Combo. I think that's with or without a Planeswalker that's eluding me right now. That deck is played in various versions. But let me show you maybe a sample deck. Now, as you can see, you can play WUR for a low price of just $18,500, featuring cards like Black Lotus with a price tag of about $5,000, a Mox Emerald, Jet, Pearl, and Ruby and Sapphire all at $1,000 or $2,000, a $2,000 Ancestral Recall, Time Walk at $1,500. No big deal. Just 2 copies of Volcanic Island at a mere $676. There's also an Eldrazi Shops version floating around out there at a $12,000 price range. Here we have main creatures being Phyrexian Revoker, Lodestone Golem, Phyrexian Metamorph, Thought-Knot Seer. Look at that. Made it all the way back. That's how powerful that card is. But you also have cards like a Black Lotus hanging out in there. Mox Emerald, Jet, Pearl, Ruby, Sapphire, all in $1,000 to $2,000 range. This deck also has 2 Mishra's Workshops, which are extraordinarily expensive, but also features 20-cent card Tormod's Crypt in the sideboard and 74-cent Witchbane Orb. So that's value, right? So as you guys see, this deck this format has its appeal because of the cards you get to play with. Okay, it's generally restricted to longtime collectors, or people fortunate to have these in their collection, or maybe people who borrow decks. But there are some other ways you can play this format, okay? One thing is to consider MTGO. The prices are much cheaper. I'm not talking 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%. Many of the decks, maybe you can get for around $1,000, around $1,000. I mean, Pieces of Power on Moto are in the hundreds or less, not in the thousands. Okay, if you don't want to play MTGO, remember you really only need 1 kidney to live. Okay, you can probably get rid of a lobe of a liver. Medical testing is something that people kind of do, but what's also common is proxy tournaments. Wizards has recently kind of cracked down on this. I don't like that. I think we should honor and respect Magic's history and some of these crazy powerful cards by actually playing with them and not keeping them in hard cases and for collectors only. These cards should be played. Some people run proxy tournaments. If you're playing at home, you could proxy them. But that's definitely something to consider. But overall, I hope this helped you understand the format a little bit more. I'm going to do hopefully a video for every format, including obscure formats. So I'd like to hear what you guys want to hear me cover next. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you again real soon. What's up, and thanks for watching this video. I produce all different kinds of content, so if you haven't yet, click on my face to subscribe. If you want to watch more videos, I've got some sweet playlists, including this one, where I open up every fat pack ever created. I've also got this one over here where I open just about anything vintage and old and expensive for your enjoyment. And all this is made possible by the awesome backers at our Patreon, which is linked in the description of every video. Hop on over there, check it out, see if it's something you might want to consider. If not, sit back, enjoy, and I'll still love you.